At the close of the 19th century, a wealthy and influential man, seemingly possessing everything, enters a brothel in Vienna. His presence is unlike that of the other patrons who seek fleeting physical pleasures or carnal satisfaction. Instead, he seeks silence. He seeks something deeper. He is not an impulsive man, but one who has attained a level of power that grants him the luxury of observing without engaging, of watching from a distance without truly participating. He is asked why he returns to this place week after week, and his response is revealing. Here, no one demands anything from me. Here, I am not the master of anyone, but I am also not a slave. Then, as if sharing a trivial truth, he utters a phrase that the owner of the place never forgets. Pleasure is the only whip no one sees, and that's why it's the one that hurts the most. True control is not imposed. It is not an act of visible force or overt coercion. True control is cultivated subtly in the deepest corners of your being. It doesn't infiltrate through iron shackles or authoritarian shouts. It is honed in stillness, in the monotony of days, in the comfortable lull of habits that, over time, camouflage themselves as personal choices. It is those small desires you never questioned, those immediate impulses that masquerade as harmless needs, but, in reality, bind you with invisible ropes you never feel until it's too late and you realize you no longer know how to untie them. Control is not in chains nor in the bars of a cell. True control lies in the constant manipulation of your attention, in the endless flow of stimuli designed to keep you busy, distracted, but never free. Every notification on your phone, every small like you receive, every new series that starts just as you finish the previous one, it's all orchestrated so that you don't realize what is happening. Freedom slips away not because it is violently stolen from you, but because you don't even realize that you never had it. In this intricate game, the enemy has no face. It is not an individual or a group that you can point to. It's not an authoritarian government or a malicious corporation that decides over your life from a boardroom. The enemy here is the programming itself, the structure of your daily life, the invisible threads that control you from within your own mind. It's the inertia that leads you to follow the same path without questioning it, to continue the same cycle of instant gratification, constant distraction, and endless validation that paradoxically never satisfies you. The more you give in to that momentary gratification, the emptier the spaces within you become, the deeper the thirst for something that never arrives to fill you. In that thirst, in that eternal void, you remain tethered without even realizing that the one who dominates you the most is yourself. But there is an alternative, a path less traveled, a path that few dare to follow, not because it is dark or dangerous, but because it is uncomfortable. It requires effort and patience and offers no immediate rewards or quick satisfactions. It requires an act of bravery, one that forces you to confront yourself without masks, without evasions, without shortcuts. It is the path of self-mastery, not mastery over others, but mastery over your mind, your body, your desires. Mastery over that which drives you without you consciously deciding it. Because when you are able to look at an impulse without yielding to it, when you can bear the void without the need to fill it with constant noise, when you have the strength to look at the desire for pleasure and decide whether to follow it, or not without falling into the trap of immediate gratification, that's when you have truly reclaimed the only thing that was ever at stake, your will. Willpower is what allows you to act instead of react. It is what gives you the strength to choose, rather than simply follow what is imposed on you. Willpower is what returns control over your life, your decisions, your destiny. And when a man possesses his will, he becomes a free being because he no longer depends on the decisions that others or the system have prepared for him. A man with will is a man impossible to manipulate, not because he has managed to detach himself from external control systems, but because he has learned not to be a slave to himself. He no longer reacts to the stimuli of his environment. He is no longer dragged by the fleeting desires imposed by others. He acts, and he does so consciously. He no longer consumes impulsively, but chooses what he consumes, when he consumes it, and why he consumes it. He no longer follows the pre-established course of his life. Instead, he takes the step forward, the one who takes the reins. He no longer lives according to the tastes, pleasures, and rewards the system offers him. Now he lives by his own will, his own goals, his own sense of purpose. So, the real question is not whether the world is designed to control you. It is not whether the powers that govern our society seek to manipulate you at every step. The real question is much more personal and much more challenging. Will you continue to allow yourself to be controlled? Will you continue to yield to the programming that has been imposed on you since birth? Will you continue to be a puppet to desires, to others' expectations, to fleeting pleasures that never leave you at peace? Or, on the contrary, will you be the architect of your own destiny? The first step towards freedom, towards that true freedom, that belongs to you by right, is the hardest. It is the moment when you decide to break with the inertia, with the programming, with the invisible chains that keep you trapped. It is the moment when you take responsibility for your own will, for your own decisions. It is not an easy step, nor a quick one. It doesn't offer immediate results or instant rewards, but it is the only one that truly matters. Because once you take that first step, once you decide no longer to be a victim of your own desires, everything changes. Freedom is not in a distant future. It is not in an ideal world. Freedom is here, in the present, in this very moment, and it is in your hands, in your ability to choose. Choose wisely, because that choice will define not only your life, but the life of everyone you touch with your example. So, I leave you with this reflection. The true battle, the one that defines the course of your existence, is not waged in the noise of the streets, nor within the marble halls of justice, nor even in the chaotic frenzy of political debate. These are mere reflections, projections of something deeper, something far more personal. The real struggle occurs in silence, in solitude. It takes place within the confines of your own mind, your own heart. It lies hidden in the decisions you make when no one is watching, in the tiny moments where your instincts, values, and desires clash. This war is quiet but merciless, and its outcome belongs to you alone. In appearance, it speaks of something simple, a choice, a thought, a feeling, but beneath that surface lies one of the darkest, most intimate truths of the human condition. This is a meditation not just on morality but on power itself, on the illusion of freedom and the ever-lurking shadow of enslavement, subtle, internal, and voluntary. Years later, Friedrich Nietzsche would confront these same themes, stripping away the romanticism and revealing their brutal core. For Nietzsche, the battleground was not just internal, it was metaphysical. He saw how desire carves our paths, how will is not born of purity but of tension. His gaze, fierce and unforgiving, stripped humanity of its comforting lies. In his philosophy, power is not seized through violence but granted through influence, through mastering what others want. And what they want, more often than not, is shaped not by need but by craving. In that very Viennese brothel, surrounded by velvet curtains and soft whispers, the rich man stumbles upon something rare, an insight that few ever manage to glimpse, let alone understand. Beneath the surface of carnal desire and staged intimacy, he uncovers a truth far more unsettling. What he truly seeks is not indulgence, not pleasure, but silence. Stillness. A pause from the world that constantly asks something of him. His wealth, his status, his very presence. These things usually invite expectation. People need him, want something from him, whether it's money, influence, or attention. But here, in this peculiar sanctuary, he finds none of that. No one asks, no one demands, no one expects. He is not a provider, not a master, and paradoxically, not a slave either. The absence of social obligation becomes the rarest form of peace. Yet this longing for disconnection, for detachment, reveals something much deeper than a mere desire for rest. It unveils a paradox at the heart of human nature, one that unnerves those who stop to reflect. In a world where power is idolized and control is glorified, those who finally attain both often find themselves imprisoned by their very achievements. The man realizes that true freedom does not lie in dominance nor in submission, but in a space that exists outside that binary, where he owes nothing and no one owns him. In this moment of detachment, he encounters a mirror that reflects not who he is, but who he has always longed to be, unburdened, unneeded, unseen, and finally, at peace. Pleasure, in this context, is not merely a fleeting sensation or a moment of indulgence. It becomes a force, a sovereign ruler that shapes human behavior from within. It does not shout commands or wave weapons, but whispers with irresistible allure. It becomes the silent master of modern existence, forging invisible chains that bind more effectively than any physical restraint ever could. Nietzsche expressed this idea with piercing clarity. True power is not wielded by those who sit on thrones or wear crowns, but by those who command the desires of others. Whoever shapes what others long for shapes their decisions, their allegiances, their paths. And this is where modern slavery takes root, not in forced labor, not in shackles or confinement, but in the manipulation of pleasure. The one who administers gratification holds the leash. Will, which should be the essence of human freedom, is hijacked. A person who does not realize that their happiness is being curated, sold, and conditioned becomes complicit in their own bondage. Society no longer needs to repress through violence. It seduces instead. It offers distraction over discipline, gratification over growth. The individual is kept docile by the promise of the next hit, the next like, the next reward. This is the brilliance of invisible control. It feels like freedom while draining the very essence of autonomy. And herein lies the central tragedy. When freedom feels indistinguishable from enslavement, the soul forgets how to resist. It learns only how to desire, but not how to choose. Pleasure presents itself as a gift, generous, spontaneous, harmless. It arrives with open hands and a warm smile, making us believe it is something earned, deserved, or even necessary. But this appearance is deceptive. The danger lies not in the pleasure itself, but in the blindness it creates. When the individual no longer sees that they are being conditioned, pleasure turns from joy into bondage. Control today does not come dressed in iron or locked in dungeons. It hides in plain sight, woven into the interfaces of our phones, the algorithms of our entertainment, the promises whispered by advertisements. Friedrich Nietzsche, even in his own time, recognized this insidious evolution of control. He spoke of it with urgency, how the mechanisms of domination were shifting from external punishments to internal compulsions. And in our era, his words carry even more weight. Today, satisfaction is instant, endless, and empty. We swipe, we scroll, we consume, believing we are choosing, but we are merely reacting. This cycle, powered by unfulfilled desire, never truly ends because it was never designed to. If fulfillment were real, awakening would follow, and with awakening, the collapse of the entire structure of manipulation. The system thrives on incompletion. As long as we chase something just out of reach, we remain obedient. It is not the pleasure itself that traps us, but the promise of more, of better, of faster, of newer. A promise that, once accepted without question, becomes the very chain we mistake for progress. The chains of modern society, though invisible, are more suffocating than any physical prison. The freedom we are told we have is not freedom at all, but an illusion carefully crafted to maintain the status quo. We are constantly fed doses of instant gratification through social media, video games, fast food, and endless entertainment. These small pleasures, while seemingly harmless, become our daily bread, the things we crave, the things we need to feel alive. Yet, in our addiction to these fleeting moments of satisfaction, we fail to notice the slow erosion of our true purpose. We become zombies, moving through a world that offers no deeper meaning than the next fix, the next rush. It is a routine without reflection, a cycle without resolution. And in this endless loop, we lose sight of the very thing that makes us human, our capacity for self-governance, for reflection, for genuine connection. The system, which we are supposed to challenge, continues to thrive precisely because it never asks us to rebel openly. Instead, it ensnares us with comfort, with distraction. It masquerades as freedom, but in reality, it traps us in the very things that were meant to liberate us. We are cogs in a machine that runs on pleasure, on desire, on endless consumption. The trap is not overt, it is subtle, masked in the language of modern convenience and instant pleasure. Yet, for those who choose to see, it is undeniable. This is the sophistication of control. To keep us running in circles, believing we are free, while we are imprisoned by our own desires. What happens when someone begins to understand this subtle form of control? What happens when the veil of illusion is lifted and they begin to see the system for what it truly is? The answer is unsettling. That person begins to awaken. They become aware of the invisible strings pulling them, of the ways in which their desires have been shaped by forces they never consciously chose. It's a moment of profound realization, a moment that is often painful, for to see the truth is to confront the extent of one's own complicity. This awakening shatters the comfortable lie that we are free to make our own choices, that we are not swayed by external forces. Instead, we begin to see that the choices we thought we were making were, in fact, carefully crafted paths laid out for us. The system we are supposed to be rebelling against has already infiltrated our minds, shaping our desires, controlling our actions in ways so subtle that we don't even recognize the manipulation. The truth is, rebellion is not about loud protests or visible confrontations. It's about internal resistance. It's about recognizing how we have surrendered our agency, our power, to external forces that feed on our dependence. And once that awareness takes root, the path forward becomes clear. Freedom is not something to be granted by the system, but something to be claimed from within. It is a mental revolution, a reclaiming of the will that has been conditioned, an awakening to the realization that true freedom lies in mastering one's desires, not in indulging them. True freedom does not lie in the simple ability to indulge in pleasure, nor does it lie in the absence of desire altogether. True freedom, the kind that transcends the illusions of modern society, is found in the ability to master pleasure, where we are no longer slaves to our cravings, but the conscious rulers of our desires. To be free is not to give in to every temptation, to chase after every fleeting satisfaction that comes our way. True freedom lies in the power to choose when, how, and why we seek pleasure, without letting it control us, without letting it dictate the course of our lives. This freedom comes from understanding that pleasure is not inherently bad, but it becomes a prison when it controls us. Whoever cannot live without pleasure has surrendered their sovereignty to whoever controls it. This is the core of Nietzsche's argument, the idea that we hand over our power to those who are able to define and shape our desires. In the modern world, this power is often wielded by the media, by corporations, by social networks, all of which thrive on keeping us addicted to pleasure, to consumption, to the constant pursuit of what we are told we want. But true freedom comes when we are no longer vulnerable to these forces, when we recognize their grip and choose to live differently. We don't need the external world to grant us permission to live freely. True freedom is an internal revolution, a rebellion, against the seductive forces that keep us trapped in the cycle of constant, unfulfilling desire. True mental power, true awakening, comes not from fighting the world around us, but from recognizing the control we have relinquished within ourselves. It is the quiet, internal battle that holds the key to liberation. When one can look at their desires and say, "This does not control me. I am the one who decides whether to seek it or reject it," they have stepped into a realm of freedom that few will ever fully understand. This kind of freedom is not loud or dramatic. It is not the kind of freedom that is paraded in the streets with banners and slogans. It is the silent freedom that arises in the quiet moments of choice, in the stillness of the mind where true sovereignty is exercised. To control your desires is to control your actions. To control your actions is to dominate your reality. This is the ultimate form of power, the ability to shape your own existence by controlling the very impulses that define it. In a world that thrives on the manipulation of our cravings and the conditioning of our desires, true freedom is an act of rebellion. It is not a rebellion that requires force or violence. It is a rebellion of the mind. It is about choosing not to follow the herd, not to chase after the empty promises of instant gratification. It is about stepping outside of the cycle and, in doing so, reclaiming the ability to shape your own future. When you govern your desires, you govern your life, and no external force, no system, no societal expectation can trap you again. And once you can dominate your own reality, once you have seized control over the desires that once enslaved you, you will find that there is no system, no societal force that can trap you. The illusion of power that the world tries to impose upon you will no longer have any sway, for you will no longer be subject to its games. The true strength of an individual lies not in their ability to control others or to amass wealth and influence, but in their capacity to govern themselves, to choose what they give their attention to, what they allow into their mind, and what they permit to shape their actions. This is where the greatest freedom lies, in the ability to shape your own existence, to create a life that is not dictated by external forces, but one that is directed by your own will, your own choices. No matter how powerful the system seems, no matter how pervasive the control that is exerted over society, when you master yourself, you master your place within it. You are no longer a pawn, moved by the whims of others, but a sovereign being, who chooses their own path. True freedom is not a grand gesture or a dramatic declaration. It is the quiet, persistent mastery of oneself. It is in the little choices, the daily decisions, that you assert your independence. And when you can do this, when you truly understand that freedom comes from within, you become unstoppable. You become the master of your own reality.